You can be a successful business owner, have 7 figures in the bank, and still feel broke.
He owes the IRS thousands and thousands of dollars because he did not manage his finances well.
So personally, I have experience going through that, and it's not fun.
If you're not telling your money what to do, your money is more controlling you.
I would never want to be in a position to where I have this business and I have so much coming in, and then I'm just trying to keep up with the Joneses, and the next thing you know, it's like, oh, well, Uncle Sam is knocking at your door. Where's my money?
Here's the way it works. You can be a successful business owner, have 7 figures in the bank, and still feel broke. And it's not about how much money you earn. It really is about how money flows. So in today's Generational Wealth Masterclass, we're unpacking why even affluent families fall into lifestyle creep, how to take control of your cash flow without living on a spreadsheet, and practical systems to make your money serve your purpose automatically. This isn't investment advice or a promise on returns. It's about principles and patterns that are going to help business owners bring order to the one thing that causes the most stress, regardless of income: cash flow. So how many, you guys here familiar with that dirty word budget?
Yes, very familiar.
How often have you talked to other people, business owners, whoever? Does anyone like the word budget?
I don't think anyone really enjoys making a budget. I think it's really difficult to sit down and be disciplined to do.
What do you think? Why don't people like doing a budget, Don?
It's just very time consuming, and you just, it's just very time consuming. It's not fun, I don't like doing it personally. So
I also think it helps when you sit down. I think that's the hardest part, is to look at what you spent money on. And then you see the things that you spent money on that you should not have spent money on. And I think that's also a reason why people avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the problem that we have is so the word budget has come out. It's kind of become a dirty word, but you have to have some sort of cash flow plan. You got to be able to tell your money, because the cash flow plan is about telling your money what to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not telling your money what to do, your money is more controlling you. And so that's the idea of why I think it's so important. But from what you've seen, clients we've worked with, things that we've seen, why is it so hard, especially maybe for a business owner, to set a good cash flow plan or be kind of aware of what they're spending?
I think that a lot of times they're hunkered down in the operational day-to-day things. And so, business gets busy. You have a lot of things going on. You have a lot of people to manage. You have products to sell or services to offer. And at the end of the day, if people look in the bank account, they're like, cool, got money in there. Or if they don't see money in the bank account, they're like, oh, I need to go do something. I need to go produce more, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times it could be a lack of discipline, and or they're just really focused on what's happening in the day-to-day, that they don't set aside the time to allocate towards putting together a budget to have a healthy business.
You bring up an interesting point that I've seen happen that I'd love to kind of see what you've experienced. People who budget by running an ATM and seeing whether or not they've got money in the bank account. Have you seen that happen a lot?
Yeah, I've seen that happen quite often.
You ever been guilty of that yourself?
Yeah, yeah, I'm budgeting that way, running to the ATM. But in the past, I've definitely seen business owners. I've been around a business owner, that has kind of failed to budget correctly, and then when stuff hits the fan, that's when it gets really ugly, but it's extremely important. I know nobody wants to do it, but you should do it, because you need to know where you stand, how much money's coming in, how much money's coming out, things like that.
I think one of the things I want to talk about a little bit, I don't know if you guys have experienced, but I call this the number one mistake that business owners make when it comes to cash flow inside of their business. When you're an employee and you get a paycheck, they automatically pull the taxes out.
Mm-hmm.
For business owners, they don't do that. I cannot tell you how many business owners that I've sat down and talked to, and they're like, I've got all this cash. I'm doing really well. And I'm like, yeah, where's your tax account? And they're like, my what? And I'm like, yeah, on April 15th, the IRS is going to want some money, or you need to be making your quarterly tax payments. And the owner of the business thinks they have more cash on hand than they really have, because they're not allocating those quarterly tax payments or the other. And I've watched business owners get surprised by this like 2 or 3 years in a row. You would think after it happened the first year, you'd be like, oh, I'd learned from that. Have you seen that? Or you ever had anybody tell you that story or come into that?
I've not heard of anyone having that experience. However, I mean, my wife and I had started a business back in April, and she runs it full time. And that was the day one. The first thing we set up in our business bank account was opening a separate account for taxes and withdrawing every single time income came in, a certain percentage was pulled out for taxes, so that whenever the day came, we're not scrambling, having to go sell some more stuff, and then we're behind for the next year. So I haven't experienced that with anyone personally, but I've heard horror stories, of course, of people not allocating dollars for taxes. For example, actually, you know what? It's funny you say that. I had a conversation with a friend 2 days ago when I was in Nashville. And he was talking about how he owes the IRS thousands and thousands of dollars because he did not manage his finances well. He spent more and more on the company and his business. And then all of a sudden, he had an IRS bill that he couldn't pay. And now he's in trouble. And so now he's trying to figure out what I need to do to make those dollars back and continue living and supporting my family on top of that. So yeah, I've seen it on both ends, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it.
So I mean, people resist a cash flow plan, but in this guy's instance, or in a business owner's instance, how important then does it become? Because as a business owner, you've got more responsibilities, you've got taxes, you've got other things that are going on. How important it is then to do at least some sort of cash flow plan to tell your money where to go.
It's extremely important. I actually would want to tell a story.
Go ahead, please.
So years ago, I wanted to be this. I want to be this business guy, and I created my own LLC, thought that I was doing everything the right way, and I get a tax bill, and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm not prepared for this. So personally, I have experience going through that, and it's not fun, So obviously having an LLC and what it was there for, I didn't really have much money, but still, I can only imagine if I'm a big-time business owner and I have all of this money coming in and all this money coming out, how significant that tax bill could be. So I'm sure that is extremely scary.
I mean, one of the things that happens, especially you get a younger business or one that starts to feel successful, you're making some money, things are going well. And I'm going to talk about how you could actually, I think there are some easy ways to get into a cash flow plan. They don't have to feel like this stressful spreadsheet budget. But, one of the things that does happen is this idea of lifestyle creep. Of like, well, I'm spending this little bit of money, but now I'm making a little bit more. Oh, I'm making a little bit more. And if you don't have the cash flow plan built in, how easy would it be? And I'll start with you. How easy would it be to start going, oh, well, now I can afford this, and now I can afford this, if you're not looking at the whole picture of where all the dollars need to be allocated?
It's extremely easy. I mean, if you have more money, you probably want to go buy nice things. But I'm sure that can be so ugly, man. I would never want to be in a position to where, I have this business and I have so much coming in, and then I'm just trying to keep up with the Joneses. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, well, Uncle Sam is knocking at your door. Where's my money? So
I think it happens. I mean, you could say you wouldn't want that to happen. I think it happens more than people want to talk about or realize.
Totally. I think a lot of people want to portray success in that way, right? You start making a little bit more money. Oh, my business is doing great. I need to have nicer things so that people know that my business does well. And they don't take into consideration the different things in life that happen, the emergencies, or, maybe something comes up that they weren't expecting, right, financially. And so, it could easily turn sideways.
I think one of the things, too, I mean, it could be, I want to keep up with the Joneses. I think sometimes there's a stress that happens inside of running a business, and you get to like this relief valve of you've made some cash, and it's like, I deserve XYZ. I deserve to be able to go on this vacation. I deserve to be able, because I've paid all these price. I've paid the price.
Yeah,
I've done this, and I haven't. I need a reward.
Yeah,
for what I've done through. But the cash flow, actually having a cash flow plan and having a strategy built around that would actually make it easier, because what most people don't realize, unfortunately, is without a plan and you go spend that money, what you thought was the reward actually becomes the handcuff. Right? The thing that handcuffs you, the price is due, it's just due further down the road, and you're not. And so it adds stress to your life. It adds anxiety. People say, I don't want to set a budget. I want to set a cash spending plan. But it's like, yeah, but if you don't set a cash spending plan, what's the unintended consequences that are waiting down the road
Yeah.
of not having done that? Here's the thing that I found to be really incredibly valuable as a business owner that helped us from the very beginning. And I guess I just got some good counsel, but I would tell people from a spending standpoint is, I think it's just thinking about percentages, right? How much of this percentage-wise needs to go to taxes? How much of this percentage-wise, needs to go to generosity and giving? How much of this percentage-wise needs to go maybe into emergency fund or long-term savings? Okay, here's what I have left over now that I've allocated those percentages, and I can live off of this portion right here.
Yeah.
But we don't stop. Unfortunately, from a cash spending plan, a lot of business owners don't stop to consider what those percentages might be. And then the other thing that gets to be key inside of that is, can you create maybe different accounts? Like, this is our tax account. This is our giving account. This is our savings account. And this is our living account. And so as you guys get to walk alongside other business owners or get to can you see how kind of having percentages or a breakdown or thinking about this could give some freedom to the planning without having to feel so much of the handcuffs of a budget? So when I describe maybe kind of doing enough percentages, what makes that maybe a little bit better than having to feel like down to a budget?
Because you're breaking it down by percent as to where the money needs to go. So if you put the money where it needs to go, then whatever you have left over, quite frankly, you can do whatever you want with it because everything's allocated where the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it simplifies it. It totally simplifies it, in my opinion, being able to see different percentages of where your money's being allocated, because you know exactly, hey, this is my profit, this is what I get to live off of. I have, 20% or, 35% needs to go towards taxes, right? And you're able to break that down where you're not tempted to touch the finances, right? I think a lot of people, if it's just 1 and 2 account, it's like, oh, I need to make up for this somewhere else, so I'm going to pull out of this one and put it here, right? And then all of a sudden you're stuck in, the fear and stress and anxiety and, feeling like you don't have enough, right? So whenever you're breaking it down from a percentage standpoint, I feel like it simplifies it, and it, I think, brings a level of peace knowing, okay, I am going to have enough to pay taxes. I am going to have enough to do this, right?
Yep.
Where you're able to run more efficiently and experience peace in the process of running your business.
Well, and so we talk a lot here about our ROI method and how the ROI method actually makes things a lot better, the return on intention method.
Yeah.
Everyone, cash flow planning is about optimization, but it really is about what are your long-term intentions and what are the relationships that are important to you. Relationships times optimization equals intention. But what you really have to solve for is, what's my long-term intention? Where do I want to be in a year? Where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? And then what are the relationships that are important to me? And then thinking about the optimization inside of that. And so much time, I think we run to the optimization. But I think what really gets to be key here is, when you reach the point, let's say you had the allocation of the percentages and you were doing that. The tax bill comes and you go, oh, okay, I got the money, the tax account, write the check, right?
Yeah.
You look in the spending account and you go, hey, we've got enough money to take a vacation because it's just in the spending account. So those rewards come, can you see how that would come with more peace when you've actually allocated it out? And so rather than going on that vacation, almost looking over your shoulder of what could go wrong that we just spent money on this vacation, you're doing it with more peace and more intention as you go into it. You see that?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
The one other thing I think that comes up, especially inside of business owners and cash flow. So we've talked about the allocation of like percentages for taxes and percentages for giving and generosity. There's a couple of things that come up. One is, what does a business owner do with uneven cash flow? So let's say that they get a big commission check in or a big contract in. So I've kind of given you some guidelines of what do we do. What do you do around something like that, do you think?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm curious to hear what you think. Like, I really don't know in that instance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm assuming you're saying, like, if you have a lump sum of money come into your business, what do you do?
Yep.
I guess just kind of going back to what we said, you should probably just allocate it to where it needs to go first, and then whatever is left over, I guess, kind of goes in the spending. Am I correct on that? Or?
Yeah, no, I think that you're thinking about that really well. Is don't overcomplicate this. So many times what we want to think, my theme is that simplicity over complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Follow the same game plan.
Yeah.
But have enough foreknowledge. So we got to set our taxes aside, right? We're going to set our generosity aside. We're going to set our savings aside. Now we've got the money left to spend. Okay, now take a step back with an educate. Okay, so we just got this big money in. Maybe now you put 2 spending accounts, meaning how much money do I need? You go create like a longer term savings spending account. Maybe we need to create that type of allocation.
Yeah.
And then you just pay yourself, let's say it's $5,000 a month, into the now spending account to make sure you don't overspend.
Mm-hmm.
So you're spending within that, and then the next month, and you just kind of see how long that's going to last, and that gives you a place to think about, okay, I've got 4 months here, I've got 5 months here of living expenses that I need to go solve for in the rest of my business or in the rest of my cash flow planning. And you're going to find business owners who will run into that, who have this, what we would call uneven cash flow. Big numbers come in or they don't. The other thing that I would say is that same advice I would give, let's say that they're making a good steady income, but then they get one other big lump sum that comes in. Well, then I would do exactly the same thing still. Again, simplicity over complexity.
Yeah.
Let's still set some money aside for taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's set some money aside for generosity. Let's set some money aside for long-term savings. And now we've got extra money, and let's dream a little bit more. You know,
Yeah.
maybe put some dreams on top of that. Is there a second home we've been wanting? Do we want to do some extra generosity, some extra giving? Are there some people that we want to do that with? Is there something we've been holding back on doing that now we can afford to do because we've had an extra payment come in? But being very intentional up front about how you want to spend that money and allocating it. Do you want to build up the emergency fund a little bit more, or some of your long-term savings? Do you want to buy an investment that maybe is cash flow producing that can enhance your wealth? Do you want to put some of it back into the business and grow the business? But you get a whole lot more choices when you keep the simplicity of just allocating
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
to the areas. Does that make sense, or does that?
That totally makes sense. It simplifies it, but it also allows an opportunity for you to maybe do things that you've held in your heart for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about dreams, right? If you have these dreams of maybe owning an investment property or a second home somewhere in the United States or out of the country, right? You're able to continue to live off of what you need without going into the creep like you were talking about earlier, right? When you get this large lump sum of cash and all of a sudden you think, well, now I have an extra $10,000, $15,000, I'm going to keep living on that, but you don't have that continual lump sum of cash coming in month after month.
Yep.
That creep will end up being your detriment. Whereas if you simplify it, continue to live off the percentage rule, and then you have the 2 different accounts and you're able to continue doing that. I love that. I think it's really awesome. I haven't heard that. That's awesome.
Anything come up for you?
Yes, I would say, just from what I'm hearing from you both, is obviously money is a tool
Yep.
that brings you abundance and peace, depending on how you structure it. You know, it could bring you a lot of burden and, and frustration. But if you don't take the time to, budget and have a cash flow set in place, then it could be a burden in your life.
And I think that's what happens to a lot of business owners. Like you said, when we said in the beginning, they're so busy running their businesses that they think that creating a cash flow plan actually comes with complexity. Mm-hmm. It's like, look, let's put some simplicity in your life. Let's make this really easy. One of the things whenever we get to sit down and have conversations with people that I advise people like you who are sitting down in front of people and having is find the lowest common denominator of simplicity. What's the simplest that we can make this, that you can go do it? Because people have a tendency to embrace simplicity. They have a tendency to shun complexity. So you tell a business owner, hey, I need you to build a cash flow plan, and here's a 50-page spreadsheet I need you to fill out. They're never going to do it.
Yeah.
Right? We need to build the cash flow plan. Hey, here's some percentages that we found have worked. If we put 20% in for taxes and 10% in for generosity and 10% in for savings, and then you lived on the rest, would that work for you? And then kind of having a dialogue of, well, it's not quite enough. Can we move some of these numbers around? What does that look like? Now you're having a real dialogue and a productive, and that simplicity makes it easier for the business owner to, and that's our job,
Yeah.
right? Our job is to walk alongside the business owner and help them thrive where they are in their business and make it easier for them to do the things that are going to set them up for that long-term return on intention.
Yeah.
Right? Not just the return on investment of getting a good return.
Yeah.
You look like something's coming up for you.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, when have you seen a cash flow plan bless someone when they might have seen it as something that's too complex and could hurt them, right, in their business? Like, oh, I don't know if I can come up with that. I don't have the tools, or maybe it's too difficult. But when have you seen the simplicity really bless them in their lives?
Well, so I think of a dentist that we served here that's in the area, and she was doing a good job of bringing in income. But when she came in initially, there were two key problems. And we're not going to talk about the first key problem today, but the first one is the business was just in her name. It was not in any type of LLC or anything. And so I was like, whoa, you're at all sorts of risk right now, especially as a medical practitioner, that thing's just in your name. So we had to get that fixed. That's a discussion for another time. But the other thing was she was one of those people who was thinking she had a whole lot of money and getting surprised every tax season. And her husband was working more in a trade, so we're kind of helping to navigate. He didn't have as much business knowledge, and so we just sat down. It's like, let's make this simple.
Yeah.
Here's your account. Let's open up an account. Let's put your taxes here. Let's open this account for generosity, and then this gets into more of how we get to kind of walk alongside people. They had some highly appreciated stocks in their portfolio, so we were, from a tax standpoint, we were leveraging some giving out of their portfolio to minimize some of their taxes, and then replenishing some of the portfolio with the cash that was in the giving. So you're implementing some tax planning strategy inside of that to minimize their overall taxes. We're putting long-term savings aside. We're going to get into just a minute. We were also helping them think about, they had young kids, so we had to think about, okay, so we have a little bit of tuition right now, but we've got bigger tuition coming in the next few years, especially if you're here in Louisiana. You might be paying for private school, so you got to be kind of allocating out that extra expense as well. But what really became beautiful was just the amount of peace of when we just really simplified it. It's like, well, I could live off of that, right? That still work. When we got everything kind of laid out, they're like, well, no, I could still live off of that, and that would work. But the peace of knowing that they didn't have to sweat it come tax season, right? It's different to look in your bank account and go, I've got $40,000 in my savings account, versus going, no, I've got $10,000 in my savings account. I've got $30,000 in my tax account. That's not my money.
Yeah.
The IRS just hasn't asked for it yet.
Yeah.
It feels different to write a $30,000 check. It's not fun, but to write a $30,000 check to the IRS and know you still have 10 than to think you have 40 and go, wait a minute, I only have 10?
Yeah.
That's a different level of fear versus peace.
Yeah.
And that's where our role as advisors and being able to come in and help them see the things that they can't see
Yeah.
on their own.
Have you seen giving increase when creating a cash flow plan for people?
Well, so generosity is contagious, right? I mean, I think the number one thing you have is, so you create the generosity plan, and most people are like, well, I don't know that I can afford to give. And it's like, well, let's just try and see if you miss it. And then a lot of times what will happen is they'll start to get excited about the giving. And then if we get the opportunity, the next step, so the first is, let me get you giving. That's first. Can we get you talking about giving? So you're like, well, I didn't miss it. That's kind of cool. Then you get excited about the things you're giving to. And then the next level of that is, especially depending on how old your kids are, so how do you now get your family? So we talk about return on intention, the intention in the relationships. How do we use a mechanism like giving to become a tool that you invite your children into? And we've got different videos and different things. We talked about that in the past.
Yeah.
But now it becomes a shared experience of generosity. The kids get excited about giving. And I'll give you an example in our own life. Right now, it was funny. I was on the phone with Clayton, my oldest, the other day, and I was like, hey, I noticed you moved this big amount of money over to your savings account. I was like, do you want to go put that in your money market? He's like, no. He's like, that's my giving money. I just haven't had the time to give it yet. And I was like, wow.
That's awesome.
That's
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
It's catching.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you know what you want to give to? He's like, yeah, I got a couple of things in mind. He goes, and so we were talking about kind of helping him set up his own donor advised fund, which is like a giving checking account. He's like, I'm not 100% sure, but I know I want to give it. So like, we're going to get him on the steps of doing that. So him being able to be in our atmosphere and that maturity and him living with our family has helped him see some of that. So, kind of sitting in our own home. I've seen other I talk about that because that was just a conversation we were having on Sunday. I've seen that happen for other families as well. But it's a cool piece that when we talk about 100 plus years of abundance and impact, having a cash flow plan can be something that, as you use it correctly, feeds into building that legacy. And you don't ever think about it that way.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that.
I think the last thing that we'll talk about, we'll talk about just really quickly, which is, as a business owner, it's making sure, so you've got the accounts allocated, but it's also making sure that you're planning for the uneven expenses. Could be tuition for a certain set amount of time. So are you thinking about that and not missing that and having that come in as a surprise? If you want a second home, what's the timing of doing that? If there's investments that you want to make, what's the timing of doing that? If there's, if you've got a daughter, is she going to get married? Are you going to pay for the wedding? I mean, all of those are things that you can be thinking about right now. Each one of those, from a simplicity standpoint, you're like, man, I end up with 10 accounts. You do, but if you've named and dedicated every account and you know where the money's going, it's like it becomes more simplicity. It's like, oh, well, that's the wedding account, or oh, that's the vacation account, or oh, that's the tuition account. And it just becomes a simpler place.
Yeah.
And some people can manage things to where they could put it all in one account, and jumbling that together doesn't confuse them. What I find is for most business owners, yes, it is a lot of accounts, but the simplicity of knowing, okay, that's this account and that's this account makes it a lot easier for them to stay structured inside of that plan. And I think that becomes our counsel to them. Again, come back to the simplicity over complexity. How can I let you go? You're really, really good at running your business. How can I add these simple little things into your life that are going to help you think with 100 plus years? They're going to help you think with intention. They're going to help with you think with you pour into the relationships of what you're building. And what we started out with was this dirty word of a budget, and we've turned it into something that is a beautiful path for legacy building.
Yeah.
And so it really, at the end of the day, is about a reframe. How do I just change your mind about what we're not creating a budget? Yeah. We're creating a 100 plus year plan for you and your cash flow to make sure that you and your family end up where you want them to end up. With less stress and with more peace. So as we get ready to kind of finish up, what biggest takeaways from our conversation today?
How I should create a budget. That was awesome. I think that's very helpful. So I'm sure business owners that will be watching this will appreciate this video.
Yeah, biggest thing for me is things don't have to be complex. Things can be simple, and they can create a lot more peace in your life when you make them simple. Because people, I think a lot of times, especially business owners, you have so many things going on in your brain. You're trying to build operations and train people and you have all these things going on. But I think that whenever you take the plan and make it simple, it adds so much more peace to your life, but not only your life, your family's life, and then even hearing about the impact that it has on your kids, right? Yeah. I think it's one of those things people talk about all the time, like, the biggest reason for divorce is finances, the area of finances. So, as business owners, we all have a responsibility to manage our finances well, to bring peace into our family, to lead them well. And it doesn't have to be hard. It can be simple.
That's right.
And it brings so much peace. And that was my biggest takeaway from today.
That's awesome. Hey, if you've enjoyed our conversation today here in the Generational Wealth Masterclass, I would encourage you to get a copy of my book, At the Bistro with Bob. This is a story of a relationship I had with a gentleman named Bob Pritchard. The book is Learning to Pursue Joy, Celebrate Relationships, and Use Common Sense. He was a business owner, an oil man, who just really taught me a lot of the simplicity that we've been talking about today. And it's the story of our relationships and the lessons I learned as he poured into me over a number of years. Is my favorite comment from Jerry Boyers, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but with more riches than just money. And so that was quite a compliment on the book. But if you, down in the link in the description, I don't know if it's free or 99 cents, but one of the two. I mean, it's you need to get a copy because it's either free or 99 cents, and we'll put the link in the description. You get a copy of that. And thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time in the next episode of the Generational Wealth Masterclass.